But hey guys, how's everyone doing? Good? Perfect, perfect. Adeola, I'm the founder and CEO of Kredete. People say Kredete, it's credit. We started by helping African immigrants in the diaspora build their credit history via remittance payments. And this stemmed from my personal experience when I moved to the US. Coming from Nigeria, I never had a credit history. And then I was literally 5 to 10 years back my peers in the US. And I said to myself, how can we build something that is necessary for the diasporans so they can get into the ecosystem? And that was what we did via payments. And how we started. As you can see on the screen, we started by sending payments to 25 African countries, real time, using stablecoin rails. So we did that through the acquisition of a bank in Africa, and we get plugged into local liquidity of the central banks across 25 countries. And we handled the entire infrastructure and liquidity ourselves to provide instant remittance on chain. That wasn't just enough. We needed to go the next step, which is providing access to credit history via this payment. So we partnered with a bank in the US and then the credit agencies. This product blew up. In 18 months, we were doing about 150 million in volume, almost 200 million in volume, half a million customers, and moving money at the speed of the light. And we started adding new products. We recently partnered with Visa in US to not just offer access to credit over the span of 5 years, but literally when an African lands in JFK, Washington, D.C., they get a credit card on demand. Now building their credits in real time. All of this connected to a stablecoin wallet. And lastly, they have dollar and euro access, which I think is the most common use cases of stables today. We didn't just stop there. We saw that our infrastructure was scalable, where businesses looking to either integrate into the African ecosystem or looking to expand and partner with local African players, both internationally in Southeast Asia, the US, the UK, even Europe. And were using our mobile application and started asking us how can we help be of value to them, and they connect to our open source API technology, and that's what we've done. So we do stablecoin orchestration not just to 25 countries now, but now to 100 countries across the globe. Talking about US to Europe, Europe to Southeast Asia to Africa, all on our infrastructure, powering global instant payments across the globe. And the most common thing we've seen is not just the cost reduction, but the time of payment settlement. In comparison with Swift, which I believe is payment 1.0, and stablecoin orchestration on and off ramps being payments 2.0. We have the ability to move money from local bank accounts in the US on chain and then settle that payment across the globe via our infrastructure. Right now, I think we did our largest volume of a single payment of $5 million in 30 minutes. Um, this was moved from the local ACH network via ACH Now, FedNow on our infrastructure, via our partners on chain on the Stellar network, and then moved to Southeast Asia. This we moved for a fraction of the cents. I can't tell you the value, but it was almost 70% cheaper than the Swift network for the clients that we're moving for them. And it's not just a use case for them, it's because they have a legitimate business and they've also not been able to get onboarded by traditional banks in the US, right? Due to compliance, regulatory reasons, and so many other factors, which has been a hurdle for them to get access to USD. And we did this for them via our infrastructure. And now we're scaling their payments platform across. So that's just one part. The orchestration aspect too is our direct connection to the SEPA network in Europe now via some of our banking networks. So we can, you can move euros up to $10 million, 10 million euros, right? Depending on the corporate account, or if it's an individual account, 100K, corporate account up to 10. And then in the UK, via faster payments, we can move money literally instantly on chain and then settle it across multiple countries. Thereby, the biggest use case now, I would say, would be the almost elimination of float accounts. I think with payment 1.0, we saw the extreme demand and need for having floats with bank networks, and it made it not so scalable for large corporation and enterprises that are moving $500 million or $1 billion annually, because they have to lock a certain percentage in reserves in a bank account to ensure successful payments. But with the innovation of stables and the right networks that can integrate across multiple channels, we've almost eliminated the ability for float accounts, because we're moving money in almost real time, if 30 minutes counts as real time payments. One of the things we've also seen is, we know legacy card schemes, Visa, MasterCards, right? They do not just thrive themselves as being a card scheme, but they also partner with banks, and which goes back through the entire ecosystem of BaaS players, banking as a service players. It's roughly an average about 6 to 8 months today to integrate with a BaaS player to get access to a card. Be it even if it's a credit bin or a debit bin, it takes a lengthy period of time. But with building a new ecosystem connected to stablecoin wallets, we've seen enterprises going as live as 8 weeks, from 4 weeks if their volume obviously sits within a minimum range, and if it's a large volume, I'm talking about half a bill, we can onboard them as fast as 8 weeks, compared to BaaS players that will probably take 8 months and up to onboard this place, because they have to go through multiple hurdles. They have to go through their banking sponsor to give an approval. They need to go through the card scheme to give an approval. But now that the money sits on chain, it's very effective for them to have a controlled card spend. And this is one of the reasons we are also seeing benefits on our infrastructure today. I highlighted four main use cases, but I think there's so many more. This is our use cases today. I talked about cross-border payments. Cross-border payments being the epitome of the African core ecosystem, and I'm going to talk about this later on within the presentation. In Africa, many people don't know this. They've built payments on telcos for many years before the invention of Zelle, SEPA, and so many of these new payment networks. And they make a lot of money. Last year, the mobile network in Africa, I'm talking about intra-Africa, crossed $2 trillion in payment volume. This is larger than the US ecosystem on instant payments on Zelle or Venmo or whatever it is. And what we're trying to help this ecosystem do is move this $1 trillion on chain, so they can pretty freely have no barrier of entry across African nations. For example, I'm a Nigerian and I need to go to Senegal, or a Senegalese that needs to work in Ivory Coast for a few months. I can freely move money across the globe without having any barrier of entry. And that's one of the biggest use cases we're seeing today, cross-border payments. So beyond the flow of the US to Africa, the intra-African network is still fragmented, and that's what we're solving today as well. Then we're talking about payouts. You have contractors within Africa that do not have access to you to payouts because PayPal isn't in Africa. So how do they get their payments? They need to connect with an agency in the US, the UK, Europe, get the payments. They take the percentage of their hard-earned revenue and then make the payouts for them. You also have agencies like Dale, Rippling, where they are employee ERR records, employee of records companies, but then they also hire Africans or Latin Americans or Asians. And whenever they need to get paid, because of how payment is fragmented, they get so much payment lost within the ecosystem. And that's what we're solving for them today by moving this payment on chain, by putting the revenue back in the hard earners pocket. I think, can we have that back on? Or maybe. All right, thank you. Then dollar and euro access, I think, which is pretty key here. A lot of people have spoken about this. I want to really get into this today. And lastly, treasury management. Uh, I talked about this earlier on. The need for float payments and float management almost eliminated. It's mind blowing because that was the ethos of payments 1.0, right? You have a pre-funded account and you can make payments across the globe on Swift channels or SEPA channels or whatever local payment channels. With the utilization of our infrastructure, we have almost eliminated this by providing payments in real time for huge enterprises. And we started from literally consumer payments. This is just an example of some of the payments flow where you're moving money from Europe to Africa through multiple bank networks. So, for example, if you are a Clear Bank, right, that you're based in the UK, you facilitate various EMIs. So the EMIs have to go through Clearbank, and then for them to make a payments to Africa, they need to go through a local channel bank. So now we have two banks in the pictures, and each banks would have intermediary banks where they keep their treasury accounts. So we're looking between 2 to 4 banks to settle in an African bank in real time. But with the innovation of stables and our infrastructure internally, we only need one bank, the issuing bank, right? And we can move the money on stablecoin rails and use our bank to make the last pound payout. So we've literally moved process from about 2 to 5 days to literally 5 seconds, based on how payments work based on the network which we are moving payments on today. And this is some of the use cases I think I talked about earlier on. I give an example of BaaS players or other infrastructures within this space. On average, they move. You can get onboarded with them in 180 days. That's what we've seen on average, based on the research. But with us, we're talking about 4 weeks up until 8 weeks, depending on how large your company is and how much volume you're looking to move. We just onboarded a very, very, very important company last week that are moving 2.4 bill annually on chain. And one of the key things that we saw with them was one, they had very much fragmented access to US because of the activities based from Hong Kong. And now they make a lot of payments to Africa because they have a large operations in Africa, South Africa, Nigeria, Egypt, Morocco, and we're able to help them off ramp in those local currencies in real time, thereby eliminating the local bank networks that they had and putting back money in their pockets because they spent it on processing fees, and they can have a high gross profit margin. This is more. So we have some key players, right? Which we partner with, DNA being one of them. They came in super early when we just had our whiteboard paper, and we're now profitable as we are today. We've raised over 20 million in capital. We've processed on our enterprise volume about $500 million. We're in 100 countries in terms of processing power. We have 1 million customers today on our network and over 2,000 businesses using us. And reasons why we have this access is because we aren't just a revenue first driven company. We are infrastructure first driven company because I believe that we do not just sit with Web3. We are a bridge. We call ourselves a Web 2.5, where we know the brand loyalty and trust that the USD, GBP, euros have built across many years, a gazillion amount of years, and now we're seeing a new technology. We need to be able to communicate that to the banks, communicate that to our customers, and obviously use the best technology today to help them to process payment the fastest way. This is some of the countries we serve in Africa. As many of you may know some of them, or you might not know some of them, but these are some of the countries we can off ramp to literally in 5 seconds or less because we're plugged directly to the central bank's ecosystem across Africa. And by the end of Q2, we should be processing in over 40 countries because they've now seen this thesis that payments in Africa should not be fragmented. Thank you for listening to me today. And like I've always said, I think payments is in its next level and next evolution. And we can obviously have a chat if you have any questions. Thank you very much.